I thought my biggest problem was my wife forgetting my birthday again. Then I discovered she'd secretly listed another man as our 3-year-old son's father on his medical records. That was just the beginning of a web of lies that cost our family $63,000 and nearly destroyed everything I'd built. My name is Rodney Carver. I'm 42 years old, and I own 4 dry cleaning shops here in suburban Ohio. I've been married to Rachel for 18 years, and we have 3 kids: Samuel, who just turned 16, Maya, our 14-year-old daughter, and little Liam, our 3-year-old surprise blessing. The thing about owning dry cleaning shops is that people think it's easy money. Wrong. It's early mornings, late nights, dealing with difficult customers, and constantly worrying about equipment breaking down. But I loved it because it meant I could provide stability for my family, something my old man never gave us growing up. Rachel used to appreciate that. She'd bring me coffee at the main shop downtown, help with the books on weekends, even brought the kids by after school. Samuel and Maya would do homework in the back office while I finished up orders. Those were good times, when we felt like a team. But somewhere along the way, things started shifting. Rachel became less interested in hearing about work, stopped asking about business challenges. She started going out more with girlfriends, joining a yoga class that met awfully often, taking weekend trips to visit her sister in Columbus. I figured she needed space, needed her own life outside of being a mom and business owner's wife. The first red flag should have been when she suddenly became obsessed with her appearance. Don't get me wrong, Rachel's always been beautiful: long auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that could light up a room. But around 6 months ago, she started hitting the gym religiously, bought a whole new wardrobe, started getting her nails done every week. Then came the phone calls, late-night conversations that would end abruptly when I walked into the room, text messages that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. But when I'd ask who was texting, she'd say it was just her sister or one of the soccer moms. The phone was always face down now, always password protected. I started working longer hours, partly because business was picking up, but mostly because the atmosphere at home had become tense. Samuel was acting out at school, Maya seemed withdrawn, and poor little Liam was spending more time with his teenage siblings than with his parents. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was reviewing our family's medical insurance claims online, something I do quarterly. That's when I saw it, a pediatrician visit for Liam that I knew nothing about. But what really caught my attention was the emergency contact information. Instead of my name as the father, someone named Brad Thompson was listed as the primary contact. I stared at that screen for 20 minutes, trying to figure out how this could be a mistake. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. Rachel had deliberately changed our son's medical records to list another man as his father figure. That evening, when Rachel came home from her book club, I was waiting in the kitchen with a printed copy of the insurance claim. The look on her face when she saw that paper told me everything I needed to know. The silence in our kitchen felt heavier than anything I'd experienced in 18 years of marriage. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway, her book club alibi crumbling as she stared at the insurance document in my hands. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the color draining from her face. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the paper. My voice was steady, but inside I felt like I was free-falling. Rachel set down her purse with deliberate slowness, buying herself time to craft whatever lie was forming in her mind. "I don't know what you're talking about, Rodney." "Brad Thompson," I said, reading from the document. "Listed as emergency contact for our 3-year-old son. Care to explain who Brad Thompson is and why he's suddenly Liam's father figure?" She walked to the refrigerator, opened it, closed it without taking anything out. Classic Rachel stalling tactic. "It's probably just a clerical error. You know how these insurance companies mess things up." "Rachel." I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. "I called the pediatrician's office today. They said you personally updated Liam's emergency contacts 3 weeks ago. You signed a form yourself." Her shoulders tensed. When she turned around, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame, but calculation. She was weighing her options, deciding how much truth she could get away with. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "Brad is a friend. He's been helping out with the kids when you're working late, which is pretty much every day." I thought it made sense to have someone reliable listed who's actually available. Available for what, exactly? The question hung between us like a blade. "For emergencies," Rodney, what do you think? Her voice had that edge it got when she was cornered, sharp and defensive. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Funny thing about clerical errors, they leave digital trails. This says the change was made on March 15th. That was my birthday, Rachel. The birthday you forgot. Again. Her face went completely blank. Not surprised, not apologetic blank. Like she was calculating whether to double down on the lie or pivot to a new strategy. I've been overwhelmed, she said finally. Maya's soccer schedule, Samuel's driving lessons, Liam's terrible twos turning into terrible threes. I can't keep track of everything. But you can keep track of Brad Thompson's schedule well enough to make him our son's emergency contact. She turned away from me, started wiping down counters that were already clean. He's been a good friend to this family. More present than you've been lately. The words hit like a physical blow. More present? I work 60 hours a week to keep this family comfortable. To pay for Maya's soccer camps and Samuel's car insurance, and this house, and everything else you take for granted. When's the last time you helped Liam with his bedtime routine? She shot back. When's the last time you attended one of Maya's games? You're so busy being the provider that you forgot how to be a father. I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in months. This wasn't about my work schedule or forgetting birthdays. This was about her building a case, creating a narrative that would justify whatever she'd been doing behind my back. How long? I asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been seeing him? Rachel stopped wiping the counter. Her silence stretched until it became an answer itself. I want you to leave, I said. Tonight. Go stay with your sister. Go stay with Brad. I don't care. But you're not sleeping in this house tonight. You can't kick me out of my own home, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Watch me, I replied. And Rachel? Tomorrow morning. I'm calling our lawyer. Rachel didn't leave that night. Instead, she locked herself in our bedroom and made phone calls until almost midnight. I could hear her voice through the door, urgent, hushed conversations that confirmed my worst suspicions. She was calling Brad, no doubt coordinating their stories before the walls came tumbling down. I spent the night on the living room couch, staring at the ceiling and listening to my children sleep upstairs. Samuel had asked why Mom seemed upset when he came down for a glass of water around 10. I told him everything was fine, but the kid's too smart for his own good. He gave me that look that said he knew I was lying. The next morning, I dropped Liam off at daycare and went straight to our bank. 23 years of marriage had taught me to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. What I found in our account statements made my blood run cold. Mr. Carver, the bank manager said, pulling up our records on her computer. I see you're here about some unusual transactions on your joint account. Over the past 6 months, Rachel had been making cash withdrawals twice a week. 500 here, 300 there, always just under the limit that would trigger automatic notifications to me. She'd also opened a separate savings account that I knew nothing about, transferring money from our business account in small increments. The total comes to just over $18,000, the manager said, all withdrawn or transferred with your wife's authorization. $18,000. Gone. Money that should have been going toward Samuel's college fund, toward the new equipment I needed for the downtown shop, toward our family's future. Instead, it had been funding Rachel's double life. I drove to my main shop in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My assistant manager, Tom, took one look at my face and knew something was seriously wrong. Boss, you look like you've seen a ghost, Tom said. Worse, I replied. I've seen my bank statements. That afternoon, while Rachel thought I was buried in work, I hired a private investigator. Frank Russo came highly recommended by my lawyer, a former police detective who specialized in marital cases. He was a straight shooter with gray hair and knowing eyes who didn't judge when I explained the situation. How long do you want to watch her? Frank asked. Long enough to document everything, I said. I need to know where my money went, who this Brad character really is, and what else my wife has been lying about. In my experience, Mr. Carver, when someone starts changing financial records and medical documents, there's usually a lot more beneath the surface. Are you prepared for what I might find? I thought about my kids, about the life we'd built, about 18 years of what I thought was a solid marriage. I'm prepared for the truth, whatever it is. That evening, Rachel came home with a new strategy. She was all smiles and apologies, claiming she'd been under stress and made some poor decisions. She even suggested we take a family vacation to reconnect. Where do you suggest we go? I asked, not bothering to look up from my laptop. Maybe that cabin resort in Michigan you always talked about. We could leave next weekend. With what money, Rachel? The $18,000 you've been siphoning out of our accounts. Or should I dip into the kids' college funds? The smile died on her face. She realized I'd been to the bank, and her whole damage control plan just fell apart. Frank Russo worked fast. Within 3 days, he had enough evidence to fill a manila folder that felt like it weighed 100 pounds when he handed it to me across the table at our local diner. Your wife's been busy, Frank said, his tone professional but sympathetic. Brad Thompson is 38 years old, divorced, works as a sales manager at the Ford dealership across town. He's been renting a one-bedroom apartment on Elm Street since February. He slid a stack of photographs across the table. Rachel and Brad entering the apartment together. Rachel and Brad at restaurants I couldn't afford. Rachel and Brad shopping at stores where she'd told me she was buying things for the kids. The money trail gets interesting, Frank continued. She's been paying half his rent, bought him a watch that retails for $3,000, and funded what looks like a pretty expensive lifestyle for both of them. My hand shook as I flipped through the evidence. How long? Based on credit card records and witness statements, at least 8 months. Maybe longer. 8 months. While I was working 16-hour days to keep our business afloat, while I was missing family dinners to provide for our future, my wife was playing house with another man using our money. There's something else, Frank said quietly. Your son Liam has been to that apartment multiple times. Neighbors have seen your wife bringing him there regularly. That was the breaking point. I could handle the betrayal. I could handle the financial theft. But putting my 3-year-old son in the middle of her affair was unforgivable. I drove home with Frank's folder on the passenger seat, my mind made up about what came next. Rachel was in the kitchen making dinner when I walked in, humming the same tune she'd been humming for weeks. We need to talk, I said, setting the folder on the counter. She glanced at it nervously. What's that? The truth. Finally, I opened the folder and spread the photographs across the kitchen island like a deck of cards. Rachel's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, defiance, and finally resignation. You hired someone to spy on me? She asked. I hired someone to protect my family's interests. Turns out there was plenty to protect them from. Samuel chose that moment to walk into the kitchen, looking for a snack. He stopped dead when he saw the photographs scattered across the counter. Dad, he said, his voice uncertain. What's going on? I quickly gathered up the pictures, but not before Samuel saw enough to understand. His face went pale as he looked between his mother and me. Samuel, go upstairs, Rachel said sharply. No, I said. He's 16 years old. He deserves to know why his family is falling apart. I turned to my son, this kid who'd been forced to grow up too fast because his mother couldn't be bothered to act like a parent. Your mother has been having an affair, I said. She's been stealing money from our family to pay for it, and she's been taking your little brother to her boyfriend's apartment. Samuel stared at his mother with a look of disgust that cut deeper than any anger could have. Mom, is that true? Rachel's mask finally slipped completely. It's complicated, Samuel. You wouldn't understand. I understand enough, he said. I understand why Dad's been working so much. I understand why you're never here for Liam's bedtime. I understand why Maya's been crying in her room. He turned and walked out, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. A few seconds later, we heard his bedroom door slam. Look what you've done, Rachel said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Look what I've done. I stared at her in disbelief. I'm not the one who destroyed this family. The next morning brought new complications. Maya came downstairs for breakfast with red eyes and a defiant expression that reminded me painfully of her mother. Samuel told me everything, Maya said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Is it true about Mom? I poured her orange juice, choosing my words carefully. Yes, it's true. Where is she? She left early this morning. Said she was going to stay with Aunt Jennifer for a few days. Maya picked at her cereal without eating. This is why you've been working so much, isn't it? You knew something was wrong. I suspected, I admitted, but I hoped I was wrong. Samuel appeared in the doorway holding Liam's hand. Our 3-year-old looked confused by the tension everyone was trying to hide from him. Dad, what's going to happen to us? Samuel asked. We're going to be fine, I said, pulling Liam onto my lap. This family is stronger than whatever your mother has done to it. But privately, I was worried about the custody battle that was coming. Rachel had already proven she'd manipulate medical records and involve the children in her deception. What else was she capable of? That afternoon, my lawyer called with disturbing news. Rodney, your wife filed for temporary custody this morning. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive and that the children aren't safe with you. That's ridiculous, I said. She's the one who's been stealing money and bringing her boyfriend around the kids. I know, but she's playing the victim card. We need to be prepared for a fight. When I picked up Liam from daycare, the director pulled me aside. Mr. Carver, your wife was here earlier with a man I didn't recognize. She tried to add him to the authorized pickup list, but I told her we needed your signature too. Brad. She was still trying to insert him into our son's life, even after being caught. That evening, while helping Maya with homework, I noticed she kept checking her phone with a worried expression. What's wrong, sweetheart? Mom's been texting me all day, Maya said. She wanted to tell her what you've been saying about her. What did you tell her? Nothing. But Dad, she's saying things about you that don't sound true. She says you've been threatening her and that she's scared to come home. I sat down beside my daughter. Maya, I need you to understand something. Your mother is going to try to turn you kids against me. She's going to tell you stories that make me look like the bad guy. But you know me. You know I would never hurt anyone in this family. Maya nodded, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. At 14, she was old enough to understand that her world was falling apart, but still young enough to want both parents to be the good guys. 3 days later, I discovered Rachel had escalated beyond emotional manipulation. She'd frozen our joint accounts and maxed out our credit cards on purchases I couldn't trace. When I tried to access our business account to make payroll, I found she cleaned that out too. Tom, I need you to handle the shop today, I told my assistant manager. I've got legal issues to sort out. My lawyer's office felt like a war room. Documents spread across the conference table showed the extent of Rachel's financial assault on our family. She's transferred most of your liquid assets to accounts you can't access, my lawyer explained. The good news is we can prove it's theft. The bad news is it'll take time to recover the money. What about my business? I can't make payroll without that money. You'll need an emergency loan. I can help you with the paperwork. That afternoon brought another blow. Rachel showed up at Samuel's school claiming I was unstable and dangerous. The principal called me immediately. Mr. Carver, your wife is requesting that we not release Samuel to you without her permission. She seemed quite distressed. Did she provide any evidence of these claims? I asked. No, but we have to take all safety concerns seriously. Can you come in so we can discuss this? I drove to the school thinking about how Rachel was using our children as weapons. She knew I'd do anything to protect them, and she was exploiting that love to gain advantage in the divorce. When I arrived, I found Samuel sitting in the principal's office looking embarrassed and angry. Dad, I told them Mom was lying, Samuel said, but they won't let me leave with you. It's okay, son. We'll sort this out. The principal, Mrs. Patterson, looked uncomfortable. Mr. Carver, I've known your family for years. This is very difficult for all of us. Mrs. Patterson, I said calmly, my wife is having an affair and has been stealing money from our family business. She's desperate to make me look like the unstable one because she knows what she's done is indefensible. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statements and Frank's photographs. This is why she's suddenly concerned about the children's safety. Not because they're in danger, but because her lies are falling apart. After an hour of discussion and phone calls to the school district's legal department, they released Samuel to me. But the damage was done. Other parents were already whispering, wondering what kind of man requires a meeting with lawyers before picking up his own child. That night, Maya asked the question I've been dreading. Dad, do you still love Mom? I thought about lying, about giving her some hope that we could fix this mess. But she deserved honesty. I love the woman I married, I said. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. The person your mother has become is someone I don't recognize. Maya nodded sadly. I don't recognize her either. Frank Russo called me at the shop on Thursday morning with information that made my head spin. Rodney, you need to sit down for this one. I've been tracking your wife's spending, and I found something interesting. More interesting than $18,000 in cash withdrawals. Much more. She's been making payments to a plastic surgery clinic in Columbus. $43,000 over the past 4 months. I nearly dropped the phone. $43,000? For what? Full body makeover. Breast enhancement, liposuction, some kind of facial work. The payments came from a credit line she opened using your business as collateral. My business. The dry cleaning shops I'd built from nothing were being used to finance my wife's affair transformation. She hadn't just stolen our savings. She'd mortgaged our future. There's more, Frank continued. The clinic's records show Brad Thompson as her emergency contact and designated driver for all procedures. So Brad had been there for her recovery while I believed she was visiting her sister. Every business trip, every weekend away, every excuse about feeling unwell, it was all part of financing and hiding her physical transformation for another man. That afternoon, I confronted Rachel when she came to pick up more clothes. She looked different somehow, and now I understood why. The subtle changes I'd attributed to new makeup and exercise were actually surgical enhancements. We need to discuss the plastic surgery, I said, blocking her path to the stairs. Her face went pale. What plastic surgery? The $43,000 worth you charged to our business credit line. The procedures Brad drove you to in Columbus. Rachel's composure finally shattered completely. She sat down hard on the living room couch, her hands shaking. How did you find out? Doesn't matter. What matters is that you used our children's future to make yourself attractive to your boyfriend. It wasn't like that, she said weakly. Then what was it like? Explain to me how stealing $43,000 for cosmetic surgery makes sense. I wanted to feel good about myself again, she said. I wanted to feel desired. So you destroyed our family's financial security to impress a man who helped you deceive your husband and children. Samuel appeared in the doorway, having heard raised voices. Mom, is it true? Did you really spend all that money on surgery? Rachel looked at our 16-year-old son with something that might have been shame. Samuel, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated, Samuel said. It's selfish. Dad's been working 16-hour days to keep our family going, and you've been spending our money to look good for your boyfriend. He turned and walked away, his disgust evident in every step. Look what you've done, Rachel said to me. What I've done? I told the truth. You're the one who chose to live a lie. My lawyer's emergency meeting the next morning was grim. Rodney, the credit line secured by your business puts everything at risk. If you can't make the payments, they can seize your assets. How much time do I have? 60 days before they can begin foreclosure proceedings. But there's another problem. Your wife filed for spousal support yesterday. She's claiming she's been financially dependent and needs maintenance. The audacity was breathtaking. Rachel wanted me to pay her monthly support after she'd stolen our savings and mortgaged our business for plastic surgery. Can we counter with evidence of her theft? Absolutely. We'll file criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. But Rodney, this is going to get ugly fast. That afternoon brought more bad news. Maya came home from school upset, reporting that some of her friends' mothers have been asking intrusive questions about her family situation. They're saying things about you, Dad. Mrs. Henderson asked if it was true that you'd been threatening Mom. Rachel's campaign to destroy my reputation was spreading through our social circles. She was positioning herself as the victim while hiding her own actions. That evening, I sat down with all 3 children for a family meeting. Even little Liam seemed to sense the seriousness of the moment. Kids, I want you to know exactly what's happening so no one can lie to you about it. Your mother took our family's money, money for Samuel's college, money for the business, money for our future, and spent it on surgery to make herself look different for her boyfriend. Maya's eyes filled with tears. How much money? More than $60,000 total. Money we don't have. Samuel looked angry. What does this mean for college? It means we're going to have to rebuild. But we will rebuild together. What about the business? Maya asked. I'm fighting to keep it. But even if I lose the shops, I'll find another way to provide for this family. Liam climbed onto my lap, not understanding the words, but sensing the emotion. Daddy's sad. Daddy's disappointed, I said, hugging him close. But Daddy's also determined to protect his children. That night, after the kids were asleep, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Frank Russo and asked him to document every asset Rachel and Brad had acquired during their affair. If she wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what real consequences looked like. I want you to find everything, I told Frank. Every gift, every trip, every dollar she spent on him. I want a complete financial picture of their relationship. What are you planning, Rodney? I'm planning to make sure she faces the full legal consequences of what she's done. She doesn't get to destroy our family and walk away rich. The next morning, I received a text from Rachel. The kids don't need to know all the details. You're just trying to turn them against me. I texted back. The kids deserve honesty. Something you've forgotten how to provide. Her response came immediately. You'll regret this. I smiled grimly as I deleted the message. She was right about one thing. Someone was going to regret this. But it wasn't going to be me. The criminal trial for fraud and identity theft began on a cold Monday morning in November. Rachel sat at the defendant's table looking nothing like the woman I'd married. Her surgically enhanced features seemed artificial under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent lights. The evidence was overwhelming. Frank Russo's investigation had uncovered a paper trail that even Rachel's expensive lawyer couldn't dispute. Forged signatures, unauthorized credit applications, theft of business funds. It was all there in black and white. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, the defendant systematically defrauded her husband's business and family for the purpose of financing an extramarital affair. She stole over $63,000 and compromised the financial security of 3 minor children. When Rachel's lawyer tried to argue that marital problems justified her actions, the judge's expression made it clear what he thought of that defense. Mrs. Carver, Judge Williams said, you have pleaded guilty to multiple felonies. Do you understand that your actions have devastated your family's financial stability? Rachel stood shakily. Yes, Your Honor. I made terrible mistakes. These weren't mistakes, Mrs. Carver. These were calculated crimes committed over many months. The sentence was 18 months in prison, followed by supervised probation and full restitution. Rachel would also lose any claim to spousal support or shared custody while serving her sentence. As the bailiff led her away, Rachel looked back at me with something that might have been regret. But it was too late for regret. Outside the courthouse, Samuel put his arm around my shoulder. Dad, is it really over? The legal part is, I said. Now we focus on rebuilding. Maya wiped her eyes. I feel bad for being happy about this. You don't have to feel bad, I told her. Your mother made choices that hurt our family. It's okay to feel relieved that there are consequences. That evening, we had our first family dinner without the cloud of Rachel's lies hanging over us. Even little Liam seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. Daddy, why Mommy go away? He asked. Mommy did some things that weren't right. I explained gently. She has to learn from her mistakes. She come back. I looked at my 3-year-old son, this innocent child who'd been used as a pawn in his mother's deception. Someday, I said, but for now it's just us 4. And that's enough. 8 months later, our lives had found a new rhythm. I'd managed to save the business by selling 2 of the 4 shops and negotiating payment plans with creditors. It meant tighter finances, but we were surviving. Samuel had been accepted to State University with partial scholarships that made his education affordable even with our reduced circumstances. Maya was thriving in high school, her grades actually improving once the stress of our family situation stabilized. And Liam was adjusting well to life without the confusion of his mother's double life. He rarely asked about Rachel anymore, seeming content with the stability of knowing what to expect each day. The house felt different now, smaller financially, but larger emotionally. We'd learned to appreciate simple things like homework time at the kitchen table and Saturday morning pancakes. I was closing up the main shop one evening when my phone rang. Rachel's number appeared on the screen. She'd been released early for good behavior. Rodney. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. I was wondering if I could see the children. That's up to them, I said. They're old enough to make their own decisions about that. How are they? They're good. Strong. They've learned they can survive difficult times and come out better on the other side. There was a long pause. I know I can't undo what I did. No, you can't. But you can choose what kind of person you want to be going forward. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? I thought about my children, about their resilience and capacity for love despite everything they'd been through. Maybe, I said, but forgiveness isn't the same as trust, and trust has to be earned through consistent actions over time. After I hung up, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The fury that had sustained me through the legal battles and financial struggles had been replaced by something quieter but stronger, a determination to build the best possible life for my children with whatever resources we had. That night, we had a family meeting to discuss Rachel's call. The kids handled it with a maturity that made me proud. "We'll see her," Samuel said, "but slowly. And she has to understand that things are different now." Maya nodded. "She hurt us, Dad. We can't just pretend that didn't happen." "Nobody's asking you to pretend," I assured them. "We'll take it one day at a time." Looking at my children that evening, I realized something important. Rachel's betrayal had broken our family, but it hadn't destroyed us. We'd learned that love isn't just about staying together. Sometimes it's about having the strength to rebuild something better from the pieces that remain.